Welcome to the Calls Out podcast, first edition for 2026. I'm joined today by our regulars Steve Stretton and Rob Bashara. How are you, Rob?
I'm well, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, as you can see, I've had a pretty good off-season. I've put the training away for a little while and I've stacked on the pounds.
So have I. It's we've got a few weeks to get rid of that.
Steve, you had a good break?
Yeah, mate, great break. Went to China and then had a nice Christmas and New Year, and same thing, lost weight in China and putting it back on here.
We're coming to you, as always, live from the Mic'd Up Studios in Parramatta. Thank you for the guys for having us here today. We've got a little bit to go through today. Off-season podcast, you wouldn't think there was much to talk about, but we're going to talk about the CEO forums, season launch that was held last night. Steve's been off at training pretty much all off-season. Must be great to be retired, mate. The upcoming trials, and we've got something a little special to kind of tease at the end of the episode, so make sure you stay for that. We're going to start with the West Tigers CEO forums. They've been held over the last 2 weeks, and both Steve and Rob have headed out to those. Rob, your first impressions of getting to meet Sean Mellencamp, our new interim CEO. You went out to the forums?
Yeah, I got invited by my cousin, who's a member and had 2 tickets. It was a really good afternoon, a good presentation. Sean's excellent. First time I've met him. He was very thorough in what he had to say. Obviously, they're trying to send a message, in particular, that the rugby league department won't be affected by what's gone on with all the ownership dramas a couple of months ago. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought Sean handled it well. He gave the people that attended a lot of leeway in their questioning, and he was very patient, where a lot of people might have cut them off at times, but he just let people have their say. And we kind of were getting to overtime before we had to do a tour of the Centre of Excellence there. But, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm not sure what Steve thought of it, but, yeah, I thought it was quite entertaining.
Well, one of Sean's pushes as CEO, it was the same at the Mariners at his time at the Mariners, was that fan engagement side of stuff. Did that come through?
Absolutely. I'd echo what Rob said. I was at the same forum as Rob. I think that's going to be the big plus, having Sean, at least in the next 12 months, is that he's going to really listen to the fans and try genuinely to meet the needs of the fans wherever possible. If he can't meet the needs of the fans, I think at the very least he's going to communicate what's happening. I think we're going to know what's going on at West Tigers. To his credit, at the forum that we were at, it got a little bit difficult in a couple of stages, and we'll talk about that later, I suppose. But he didn't shy away from it. He stood there and he answered it, and Barry O'Farrell was there, and other members of the team were there, and they all had a say, and they were open and honest as they could be. And I think any fair-minded person would have walked away thinking, well, we were respected today.
So we're going to be lucky enough and actually have Sean on the Calls Out podcast, hopefully next week. We have teased it as being on Monday. We're playing around with times a little bit. We're going to concrete that out, so make sure you get onto our socials and follow our socials, just so you can be aware of when he's actually going to be on. But what were your key takeaways from that time with Sean on last Tuesday, was it?
It was, I think, the Tuesday before. Yeah, 2 Tuesdays ago. But look, the clear message was they definitely want to get the fans, members, supporters trusting the club and where it's at. And I posed some difficult questions, I thought, and some comments. I don't know if Steve's going to touch on them or not. And look, he handled them really well. And I even went up to Sean afterwards and said, look, mate, I had to speak my mind and say what I felt. And he was very comfortable with what I said, and he didn't take any offence to it. But it's hard.
Which is a change for you, like having a positive interaction with some of our leadership.
Yeah, but you have to question some of the things that are going on and how it's all going to work. And like Barry was there, and I questioned, how's Barry going to work on a board that didn't really want him there? And it was only
sacked him.
Well, sacked him, and let's be honest, he's only there because Volandi's intervened. Otherwise, they were going to have Ben Elias and Tony Mestrov. So even Sean wouldn't have had a job if the NRL hadn't stepped in. So I find it hard to accept that getting sold a story and actually believing like things are fine and things are stable. The reality is, I know Sean stayed at Central Coast Mariners for 9 years, but he's the interim CEO. We need some permanency. We need some signs there that everything is going to be stable. And right now, how can we have a guarantee that Sean will be there next month? And we don't have that.
Steve, you're a very thorough person. I'm sure you have lots of notes from that forum. Can you go through those a little bit for us?
Yeah, I can. Look, I think the number one thing which sort of bounces off what Rob just said is the point Sean made, which I thought was a really interesting point, a good point, is he wants to move from ownership to partnership was the point he made. And that really encouraged some discussion in the room because it was talking about, how the board operates and how it relates to the club. But he's very idealistic in what he wants to achieve in the time that he's got. Like he's going to be CEO for 12 months at least, and obviously I'd say he has hopes to become the CEO down the track. But he wants to really work with Holman Barnes Group. Now, I know Sean pretty well, and I respect him, and I think he can do a really good job. But I've got to be honest and say I think his hope and his vision is really out there, and it's a long way from sort of reality. He wants to work with HBJ. He has said that so far he's found them really good to work with and talk with. That's only a very small period of time, but he said everything so far has been really positive. And he's hoping to be able to massage, I would say, the relationship and build the relationship and try to get the football club and HBG working together. Whether he can or not, I really don't know. The two big things that came out of the meeting as far as getting us, interested and talking, one was home grounds again that came up, and that was a really interesting discussion. They threw figures at us, and I haven't got them written down, but it's something like if we play at Combank at Para, we make something like 800,000 through the gate and 400,000 through corporate, something like that. So it's about $1 million. When we play at Leichhardt and Campbelltown, you're making like a couple of $100,000 through the gate and $50,000 in corporate. It's like the difference in profit is unbelievable. And I know our strategy. Our strategy is to make Leichhardt and Campbelltown, our home grounds, because that's traditionally, historically, and where our hearts lie. And I am so much in love with Leichhardt Oval, but even I can't justify going to Leichhardt Oval, even with the changes that have been made, when that amount of money is been thrown away. And so that brought up a lot of discussion.
And how do you compete with the big clubs in that situation?
Yeah, exactly.
Like the Roosters have multi-hundreds of $1 million stadium there at Moore Park, and we're still playing at Campbelltown and Leichhardt, and that's where I want us to play all our games. But it's really hard as a club, Rob.
And that's a juggling act. I mean, they've got to make money, but they also want to have a home ground. And I raised that point with Sean in particular. I questioned, are we about winning or are we about making money? Because I don't want to play Parramatta at Combank. And I can't see – it's easy to say, well, don't play Parramatta at Combank and lose money. You need to come up with an alternative solution. So when we've got a game at Easter, I touted, why can't we play it at Olympic Park and either share the gates or, just alternate every year who gets the gates. And we've been there in the past. I know some of the tickets have been free from the Easter show and what have you, but we've had 40 to 55,000 there. So we can attract a big crowd. We can still make money. But if we're playing an opposition team at their home ground, you can't tell me we're about winning. And until that changes, nothing will change. And I just want to touch on one thing Steve said, and you're right, Sean's got a real big vision that's out there. To his credit, though, he did say it was going to take a while. He never gave us any indication that everything's going to be magically fixed and all be done within 12 months. He said it's a very long-term solution.
I'm not being critical of his vision. I think that's a great vision to have.
Yep.
I suppose my point is, I think, I don't want to be overly strong with my language, but I think it's almost a fantasy. To think that you're going to be able to. No one has been able to work with these guys. No one. And I wish him all the best, and I'll get behind him and support him 100%, as we all will, because we all want that.
100%.
But I just, man.
And that's the thing. You start wondering, and Sean can answer this for himself next week with us. Did Sean say that he wants to work as a partnership? I don't look. Our whole vision was to be independent. the partnership is being forced on us because we have no choice. So he has to go by that criteria and say we have to work as a partnership. The reality is West Tigers board should be working on their own for West Tigers.
And we had an independent board that started to move this club forward.
Yeah.
You raised the point about Sean saying this is going to take a long time. That goes back to your point, the fact that he's in an interim role.
Yep.
It's really hard to set in place those long-term strategies as a CEO when you're only in an interim role, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure he, as I said earlier, he would want that role full time, and this 12 months is his trial period, I suppose. The difficulty he has is that these guys at Holman Barnes are so quick to pull the trigger if they don't like you over the simplest thing and as quickly as they possibly can. Like there's no negotiation, there's no let's sit down, mediate, and fix this problem. It's you're not doing what we want, we don't like you, or our perception is you're not the right person, so you're gone. And you cannot argue that. You cannot argue that that's not the case because it's happened time and time and time again. They don't want someone, they find a way, whether it's using good values or poor values, they find a way to get rid of people. And so Sean is in this precarious situation where he needs to drive our club football, speak on behalf of West Tigers and the football department in particular, but at the same time not get chucked out the back door.
And we want someone who's planning for long-term success, not just short-term success so they can extend their role. I think it's crucially important that that interim position, that needs to be sorted. If it's Sean, fantastic. I'd like it to be Sean moving forward. But we need someone who's there locked in long-term because we can't just be looking for that short-term success role.
And we thought we had that with Shane Richardson. And what I found interesting from the forum was for someone that got sacked by the club, there were a lot of references from Sean to Shane Richardson. So it's not like he's not allowed to be discussed or spoken about. There's even, if you walk around the office, you see Shane Richardson's name there, attributed to a couple of quotes and what have you. So it's just interesting that he was professing that he's following the model that Shane was talking about, yet Shane's being classed as this bad boy by Holman Barnes Group and got kicked out. Yet Shane Richardson was the only guy that's multiple times resurrected clubs from the bottom and won premierships.
Can I mention a couple of other things that came out that I thought were really important? One was from Barry O'Farrell, which is not easy to hear, but he said, "He who owns the toys gets to play with the toys." And he said, and we have to remember that. We have to remember that we are owned by the Holman Barnes Group, and as much as we want independence at West Tigers, they own the thing.
Yeah, you can't play with the toys if you break them, though.
Yeah, 100%. But I agree with you. But you can't argue against the logic of what he said. It's true. The other thing that Sean said that I thought is really good, because it's a bit anti what we've seen over the last few years, he said, I don't want anything to change. We're on a path. I want it to continue. And he actually said, in the last few years, we've changed tack too many times. We give something a go for a short period of time. If it doesn't work, we move on, we change. He said, we're not doing that. He said, we've set our direction, we've set our path, we've got our strategic plan in place. We're not deviating off that. We're in here, we're in for the long haul. That's reassuring to hear.
Now, I'm sure the forum, the governance issues took up a fair part of the forum, but I'm sure there was other things to discuss, guys. What else did he have to say?
He talked about 4 main goals, and he didn't go into great depth. And this was early on, and people, all of us in the crowd, we were still sort of settling in, and probably didn't have our confidence up to jump in. But he talked about he wants us to have the best pathways in the world. Very aspirational, right? But that's what he wants. So he obviously has not just him, the club are really focused in on developing further the Pathways program. He gave what I thought was a realistic goal for membership. He said we're aiming towards 13,000 members. I think that's really good. I asked the other day where we're at, and we're at 9,000 this year already. That's better than where we were this time last year. So they're tracking forward. And I don't think 13,000's out of the question. He talked about developing resources. and the need to continue to develop our resources. Now, whether he meant human resources or physical resources, he didn't say, and he wasn't asked, but he wants to do that. And again, and I think we know this about Sean, he really wants to develop that aspect and concept of community. And interestingly, and we'll get to this later, at the launch yesterday, both Kai Pearce-Paul and Bundy Afoa mentioned the family atmosphere and the community atmosphere at the club. Now, whether they've been told to say it, I don't know, right? But it didn't seem it. It seemed genuine that they've slotted in really well, and they've said the club is just so engaging and welcoming, and it's made that transition from Newcastle and New Zealand easy.
Yeah, and if you have a look at Sean's history, his time at the Central Coast Mariners, the community aspect and the fan engagement side of the club was second to none in any sporting competition I've looked into. The way he was respected by the Mariners fans when he left, that gives me a lot of hope for the future, because I've never seen a CEO when they've left a club be given a standing ovation by the crowd, and Sean got that when he left the club. So there must be good feelings about him up in that area. I'm going to ask you both, but I'll start with you, Rob. Your overall feelings about the direction of the club after meeting Sean and listening to Sean last week.
I don't want to disrespect Sean in any way. I loved everything he had to say. I loved how he spoke to everyone. I can't be clear on the direction. I'm just hoping that the football department is quite separate from the ownership side. But if you're asking me about the club from an upper level, I can't see what direction it is right now. I think we're all just guessing. We've seen how unstable things are. And again, I don't want to shoot the messenger. Sean's doing the right thing, getting feedback from fans. They got the club, Holman Barnes Group, got the feedback from the fans a couple of years ago. Correct. With your petition, with the Barney Crawford report. We're just going through this again. I think it's just a very polite public relations exercise. And there's nothing wrong with getting the fans on board and wanting to get them to re-engage and come to the club and sell us a vision for what they want to do. That's wonderful. And again, I don't want to shoot the messenger, because Sean is probably portraying a message that Holman Barnes Group want him to portray and talk things up, which is wonderful. For me, it's just going to come down to following the team, following the footy, hoping Benji and the boys do a great job. I was lucky enough to meet Jahream Bula before the forum, and that made my day. TV doesn't do him justice. He's one of the best looking blokes I've ever seen.
You're sitting across from me, mate.
Yeah, I know, and it probably makes him look even better now. But yeah, he was so polite and he was so upbeat, and yeah, look, I just want to focus on the footy. I think, as not only I've said on the podcast, but coincidentally a few people said in that forum, they said, you've ripped the foundations down, like Holman Barnes have ripped the foundations down, and now we've got to start again. So I feel like the last 2 years from a trust level has been ripped apart, and now we have to start again. And look, the only thing I can say as a West Tigers supporter is we've been through everything. Like, it just, nothing can break us, and we're all in the same boat. But we definitely have to lock in home ground issues, because it's one thing to talk about the difference in money and what have you. But I raised a point basically saying you need the kids growing up being emotionally attached to the team like we all are. We're not going to be around in 30, 40, 50 years. We need the kids to be locked in. And right now they've got the choice of going for South Sydney or going for Canterbury we've got to really get ourselves locked in that MacArthur area. Now, Sean's committed to that, which is wonderful, but we're still dropping the ball there. We need to go in gung-ho, and you can't have your last game at Campbelltown in June for whatever reason it is. There needs to be, you need to be going to games every week, every second week, and getting attached to that team.
As a positive on that, Steve, I believe Sean mentioned about the West Campbelltown wanting to re-engage with the club as well in the forum.
Yeah, he did, and he said it's a priority of the club is to make that work. Much more opportunity for that because they are willing to engage. Before the club would reach out and they'd get a brick wall. Well, that's not the case anymore. But can I also just go on for what you were saying, Rob? I got a case study. It's just one person, but
sure.
I was talking to a bloke the other day who's got grandkids, and his grandkids support Penrith and Parramatta, right? So we all think and talk about the fact that Penrith are getting lots of kids supporting them because of their grand final wins, right? But these kids support Penrith and Parramatta. one's at the top, one's at the bottom. They live in Tigers catchment. They support those two. You know why? Because they're the two clubs that have gone out to their school and run clinics. And so that, having a first grade player right there in front of them, giving out little footballs, giving out bits and pieces, talking to them, has won them over, and they've got supporters, which could be for life, right?
But it can't be a coincidence. But Sean also mentioned at that forum that his kids support Penrith. And Sean worked at Penrith for a while. Now, that's probably because they got to go see Penrith and go to regular games. I just think it's, when kids grow up, they fall in love with the team. Like when I started supporting Balmain as a little boy, they were coming last and they were never playing finals. It was in the early 70s. So you just get attached to the team. They don't have to be winning, but it's just about regularly going to a game with, with a mum or a dad or both of them, and just having that regular habit to do on a weekend, and we don't get that now.
Brainwashing, it's called.
Well, it probably was brainwashing.
So,
but you know what?
Rob,
For all the suffering I went through, I wouldn't have it any other way.
You didn't follow footy till your late teens.
And talking about that community aspect, getting into schools, that's Sean's bread and butter.
Absolutely.
That's the programs he was working in when he was at Penrith, the Panthers on the Prow. It's what he did at the Mariners. And you can see with the pathway, the community program, the name of it's just slipped my mind, Steve. You might be able to remember.
No, I haven't got it.
West Tigers in Power. That community program is solely focused on getting into schools.
Yeah. And if that case study that I just mentioned is typical of most kids, then it's pretty important, right? It's pretty important that it's done, and it's done well, and it's done thoroughly.
Now, what I'm realising as we're going through this run sheet, Rob, is now Steve's retired. He pretty much just lives at the West Tigers. So
he invites me down there every Monday morning. I haven't gone yet. I might go this Monday. I'm definitely not going the Monday after. I'll be watching the Super Bowl.
So this pod, because we're doing a lot of the off-season stuff, is turning into a bit of the Steve Stratton show. Steve, you're at the club again last night. You're there for the West Tigers season launch.
Yep.
Rob and I know nothing about this event.
All yours, bud.
I've seen the photos online. Can you give us a little bit of a rundown about what happened last night?
Yeah, sure. Like it was a great event. The club have really got their act together in putting on these functions. Like I can remember years ago, you go to a West Tigers function and it was just hopeless, right? Everything they put on now is professional and slick. It was held at the Zurich Centre of Excellence. It was, I don't know if you know, outside upstairs off the gym there. There's a big, fake grass area.
Where they play basketball mainly.
Oh, is it? Right,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So it was out there and it was catered and it was really nice. So there was, drinks and nibbles and that. But the great thing about it was the players and the coaching staff were all there and they were all available. They eventually congregated together, but for the first 30, 40 minutes of the event, they were all out and about and they were available to you, and that they were actually coming up to us as opposed to just standing there and waiting for someone to come up to them. And I want to make mention of one person in particular, and that's Suni Taruva. And I spoke to you guys about this before. There was 4 of us at a table, and he came up to us, and he was there between 10 and 15 minutes with us, and he discussed anything that we asked him questions, and he answered it openly, honestly, and at no stage did he look like he wanted to find an excuse to get away, or was he thinking of anything else? He was engaged in our conversation, and they were all like that. They were all like that, and it was a great event.
Benji Marshall, I'm sure, spoke at the event. Any key messages coming from Benji about the season ahead?
No, pretty much the same as last year. It was different to last year, and to be honest, I preferred last year's. If you remember when I spoke on pods last year, I was really captivated by it because he spoke so passionately. What he did this time was, and he said, I've prepared. He said, I'm telling my team we need to be prepared and professional. So I've done the same thing and prepared. And so he read his speech. So that meant he didn't. That's fine. It means he didn't forget anything. But I don't think that passion that Benji can express came out reading it. But that's just my opinion. What he spoke about mainly was pretty much the same as what we hear from Benji. He said at the end of the year they did a player review and player interviews, and he made the point that it was absolutely raw and absolutely honest, and all the players were told, and I imagine that have self-reflected on the coaching staff as well, because he said that so many times. But there was talk about what they need to do to improve and what they've got to do over the off-season to make those improvements to come back into pre-season. And he said what we hear from every club at this time of year. He said they've never trained harder. They've never
fitter.
They've never been fitter. But you know what? You know what caught me again with this playing group on the odd occasion that you get to see them all together away from the football field is they're just so close. And they just enjoy each other's company so much, and they just have such a good time together. So all that important stuff of gelling and being united is there. It's just now implementing the skills of playing footy.
I do remember about 3 or 4 years ago, Steve, you and I sitting at a trial and talking to each other about how connected the club seemed.
Yeah.
And we got the wooden spoon.
Mate, is it still January?
It's still January.
We've got to be optimistic. We've got to be optimistic. But it was good. Look, Sean spoke as well. Appy and Jahream spoke as co-captains. So they were announced as co-captains for the year.
Surprises there.
Yeah, that's right. No left field choices. And then Bunty Afoa and Kai Pearce-Paul were interviewed as new players to the club. That was very positive. What I took more away from was actually the chat with Taruva. He said a few things. He said, one, Latu Fainu is ready to go.
He's not going to miss the first few weeks?
No, not according to Taruva.
That's positive.
He's right.
And he's been involved, like I haven't been the training like you have, Steve, but he's been involved in, you look at the videos and the pictures coming out of training, he's been heavily involved since training started.
Yeah, he's still wearing the singlet, the less contact singlet at training, so he's not fully there yet, but according to Taruva, he's available for selection first game, round 2. And the other thing that was coming out from a number of players was Dewey will be 7. Yeah, I think we know that. That's it. I asked Taruva, what's the role for Latu, and he said 14. He said he'll be 14.
And you've been out the training, and it's in my training section, but I'll raise it now that you're talking about it. You've seen him training at 9.
Yeah, he has been. Yeah, not a lot, but he's been in there,
which kind of suits that 14 role.
Yeah,
if
that's
you're
right.
going to play him in the 14, you want him to be able to cover that 9 role.
Yeah. Well, he's going to have to if we're going to give Appy a break. That's for sure. One other thing that came out of yesterday was that Stafford Toa is going to play, but he's not 100%. He didn't have surgery on his shoulder.
Shoulder.
He didn't have surgery on his shoulder. He was told that if he had surgery, he was going to be out for 5 to 6 months with no guarantee that the surgery would fix it. So the recommendation was not to have surgery. So he hasn't. He said he can fend out, but he can't fend from close to his body, and so he's tackling. He said there's no problem. But it's just that close in fend that he struggles with, but everything else is okay.
And it's kind of what we saw in those games last year where he did pull up sore from those injuries. I think you would have noticed that, Rob?
Yeah, the first half of his season compared to the back half were chalk and cheese. He was actually a bit of a worry at the end of the year. I was one that touted, let's re-sign him early last year, and by the end of last year, I didn't know whether we should keep him or not.
And that fend is a key part of how he plays. That's how he That's how he beats his players. So I think that's something, a little bit of a concern moving into the season.
Definitely a concern, but again, who do we play at right centre if we're not thinking of switching Macassini or Taylor into that side?
So, Steve, you've moved into the training insights. As Rob and I discussed a moment ago, you pretty much live at the... Have you got an office at the club now? Is that what it is?
Cafe.
I've asked for one, but, they're a bit slow in responding.
We'll have to ask Sean when he comes on next week. So you've been out the training. You've mentioned Latu. You've mentioned all the players stating that Adam Dewey's going to be that number 7. Is that what you're seeing at training?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm seeing. There's no great surprises. The team pretty much picks itself. It's hard to gauge the final team because they swap in and out so often at training. But I think we're going to see a team pretty much the same as last year, and Jahream at 6, Dewey at 7.
Rob, you're fairly happy with Adam Dewey in that 7 role, I would suggest?
Given what we've got there, I think our only true natural first receiver is Jock Madden, who's back at the club. He's not going to get a look in unless there's injury. We're definitely gone from Batman to Adman, so I'm happy with Adam to be there. I think he'll do a great job. And the one thing people, keep questioning with Adam, he's not a natural halfback.
Like I do.
He's too tall. He's this, he's that, whatever. He's the one guy that will impose his will on the team. He wants to win. He loves the club. He's really passionate. That will come out on the field, and we actually saw that. It felt to me he won a couple of those games late last year on his own. And if you've got your halfback, your 7 being close to your best player on the field, that's going to only help the rest of your team.
And I guess that positive side of getting to train there the whole off season, he doesn't really get that in many roles because over his career he has been moved around a fair bit. He's played fullback, He's played 6, he's played in the centres, he's spent a little bit of time at lock as well. I think for him to make his best go at this 7 role, that this pre-season is going to be crucial.
Yeah, and he likes to be the man as well. So he wants to be the key guy. Like, it's not an ego thing, but he just, he knows what he can do and he can produce it. So it was lucky that Benji just stumbled across it in that Manly game at Brookvale. That was where we got to see Adam have a bit of a good cameo there, and then it kept going on to the Roosters game and some of the other games. So I'm really looking forward to him being number 7, and that's not a knock on Jahream Bula. I love Jahream Bula, but I think we've got to bounce off him as well. But if Jahream can just focus on his attacking skills and doing what he does, I think it's just better that there's another person being a general. A bit like, I'm not saying Adam Dewey's Nathan Cleary, but the fact is that Jahream Bula was a second fiddle at Penrith, and I think that's just going to suit him a little bit more, take a bit of pressure off him, and Jahream will still impose his will on the team.
And that's come out in Jerome's sort of language in his interviews over the past week or so about how he's no longer looking to be that Batman that he said he was going to be when he came here, that he feels he's best in that second fiddle sort of role that he had at Penrith.
Yeah, look, I actually think he could have been the Batman, but I don't think Benji knew how to get him to be the halfback that we want him to be, because we saw in his very early games at Penrith when Cleary was injured, he played a couple of cracking games when he first started his career off. So he could play that 7 role, but I just think he got so used to playing so many years as that second fiddle, it was hard to get him back into that main man role, and he couldn't convert to that. And full credit, if they all recognise that, it's great that he's putting his ego aside and saying, no worries, coach, you want me at 6, I'll play number 6.
Now, the other part of that, Steve, is you've been out there a lot. The structures you're seeing, much change from last year, or are we kind of structuring ourselves the same way? Because at times, I know both Rob and I had question marks, especially in the 20, about our attacking structures. What have you seen out there?
Yeah, it's I haven't seen a lot of work in the back end of the field, like coming out of trouble. I haven't seen them do a lot.
Which is funny, when you go out the training, and I've been out the training a number of times, they do focus on that red zone attack.
Yeah.
What you see most of the time is that red zone attack against the second string players, and that's what they seem to be practicing all the time. But our red zone attack over the last 5 years has been incredibly poor.
So a couple of things that I've picked up. One, they're playing much more expansive. So a lot of attack coming off a second receiver, 2 passes wide of the ruck. And they're doing that a lot. They're making a concerted effort to get to a certain point on the field. They want to be back to the center of the field really early. They're throwing long passes, get them in the center, set up left and right. So that sort of tells me that
splitting the halves.
Yeah, splitting the halves and looking to have a viable attacking options left and right. Whereas last year they focused a lot on going left, and the right side sort of got lost a bit, which is no good, because Stafford Toa, he's close to our best player at beating a man one-on-one, right?
If you give him space.
Yeah, and so it looks
Till
like
Taylor got there.
Till Talon got there, fair point. And the other thing with that 2 wide attack is Jahream Bula has been getting in at first receiver a fair bit. So he'll just jump in, just offload the pass to the second receiver, and off they go. Yeah.
A couple of questions. When Jahream is getting into first receiver, are they doing that thing they did last year where they'll have the 2 halves on the other side and have him isolated on one side that you can see, or you haven't noticed?
No, I haven't noticed that. I don't know whether I've missed it or I didn't notice it because it's not happening. But he's definitely there primarily to shovel the ball out.
Can you kind of, are you aware of who's playing on the left and right?
Yeah, Adams on the left, Dewey's on the left, and Jahream's on the right. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because where Jahream's played his best football has been on the left, Rob.
Correct. That really surprises me.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised to see that come start of their season.
Yeah, I would prefer to see it the other way. Taylor on the left,
Yes.
Sam Fainu on the left, I would think
Yeah.
as well.
Yep.
And then the right side, you got Toa and
Pierce Paul.
Yeah.
Seafarth dropping into front row, or perhaps Lock, where when they swap around, but coming into that tight forward role.
It'll be interesting to see where Seafarth kind of fits in this year, because I think some of the upgrades to the squad, he was our starting second rower last year, Rob, and Kai Pierce Paul's arrival at the club probably limits his time as a starter at our.
Definitely. Well, he's not starting at second row with Sam Weller and Kai Pierce Paul. They've obviously tried to find a role for him. I think bench is probably his best role. He's not a starter for me.
Especially if we go to the six-man bench.
Definitely. Well, but I still think in the six-man bench, there's probably a role for him of the four players that are chosen to play, regardless, because he has got options to play. He can play middle, he can play on the edge there. But yeah, definitely the six-man bench is going to help us. It's going to help all teams, to be fair.
We've spoken a bit about our backs and what you've seen. Now, Terrell May was our
Our secret that we didn't publicise.
won the Kelly Barnes medal last year. Totally disappeared at the start of this off-season. Not in any pictures. Disappeared off socials. Led to concerns about maybe an injury worry for him. Have you seen him at training? Because people were going through photos and trying to find his tattoos. What's going on there, do you know?
Terrell May has been at training. He wasn't doing all the training. He would be doing the ball work. He wasn't doing the fitness work or doing that with all the other players, which led us to believe that he was carrying an injury of some sort. I don't know that. We actually asked the club, and they said no, he's got no injury at all. But what we saw out in the field sort of indicated that he did. But be that as it may, when we first saw him, he looked like he'd put on a lot of weight.
That he'd spent the off-season with me?
And me.
Exactly. Yeah. He was a big boy, right? And then at the launch yesterday, before the launch, he walked past me, and I thought, have I got this wrong? Like, what? Is this been playing tricks? Because he looked as fit as, and I found out that he's dropped 12 kilos in a month.
That's great.
To get himself back into shape. And when I saw him yesterday, he looks ready to play.
He's the engine room, mate. If we don't have him, he played the role of two prop forwards last week. He was averaging about 70 minutes a game. When I heard he was 10 or 12 kilos overweight a month ago, I thought, we don't want to be talking about this. Let's just hope he sorts himself out. And for whatever reason, he put the weight on. Who cares? Glad he enjoyed his Christmas. But, yeah, we need a very healthy Terrell May to be going anywhere this year.
Because I still feel we're a bit light in that forward pack, and a lot of the weight falls to him, mate.
Yeah, we are. Look, we've got to trust what the football department thinks. I don't know why they don't think we need another middle. The good news is, as we were told at the forum that Steve and I were at, Bunty Afoa is training the house down. Everyone's super impressed with him. I got to see one of the test matches that Kai Pierce Paul played for England. I was very impressed that he was able to do what he was doing in that, given he's playing the best team in the world, the best of the best, and he was still producing offloads. That can only be great for our outside backs or Jahream Bula sniffing around there. Look, we've got to play to our strengths, and when I look at that back line, like, that is mouth-watering. We've got so much potential there to play Benji ball, like play to the coaches'
and it sounds like,
style.
from what Steve's saying, it's going to be an open, expansive style of play.
It is going to be that. But look, let's not sort of go too far and expect too much from the trials. The trials are really just a fitness thing. There's just going to be a lot of yardage work. We're going to play a very probably simplified game. We're not going to show our hand too much. It's just about getting through our sets. I don't see any trials where we're going to throw the ball around, and play jungle ball, for want of a better term.
I'm going to throw one out there early, a bold prediction. I'm actually cautiously optimistic that we've got our middles sorted. All right. Now, at the end of last season, I was the first one with you guys. We're all in agreement that we need another middle. In fact, we need an apex middle, right? Looking at how fit Bunty Afoa is and Royce Hunt, they are super fit. Right? They look brilliant. Now, if that transfers onto the football field and they play longer minutes, they fatigue less, they make less errors because they fatigue less and they're fitter and they're impactful. Because they are impactful players, both of them, then I reckon our middles are sorted. Now, if we get hit with injury, what's below that top level, I can't find a spot for Seafarth in the 17, and I'm not like Gary. I'm not against Seafarth. I don't bag him at every opportunity and jump on his grave.
I don't like redheads, mate.
Right, but I can't find a spot for him, which shows we're growing in the forwards and we're stronger. And so we get an injury, he comes in, like we lose impact, but we've got a bloke who can play first grade at least. I think we're almost there.
So with that confidence, how do you see our lineup, especially our props? We're talking about our middles.
We'll just go through our props, I think.
Yeah. How do you see them come round one?
I wrote it down, right? So I've got Terrell and Sione starting. I don't think Sione will start. I don't think Benji wants that, but that's what I'd do. I think he should start. And then I've got Latu at 14. Then I've got Hunt, Pole and Afoa, 15, 16, 17. And you can sort of say to yourself, well, that's a little bit prop heavy. But the fact that you can now carry 18 and 19,
correct.
I think you can carry three.
Who would you be playing at 13?
12.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's weird, but it feels like we've just signed Royce Hunt, if that makes sense. Like, given what he's done in the off-season, I think we're actually going to get a better version of Royce Hunt, perhaps that version that we saw in the last game of 2025. So if we can have him, doing what he's doing, that's just an absolute bonus for us. It's funny, when Steve just read out the names, I'd forgotten about Fanua Bole. That is how poor a season I think he had in 2025. I'm not being disrespectful to him. I love the bloke. I want him to do really well. So hopefully he's had a good off-season and got rid of whatever injuries he's had. So with that, they're basically, to me, like new additions because they didn't perform last year. And then you add Kai Pearce-Paul, you add Bunty Afoa. Suddenly you're looking okay. But again, we had a great year with injuries in 2025. When I say great year, we had the least amount of injuries and we still finished 13th. So the question, put your West Tigers heart aside. We came 13th. You have to say, does having Taylor May for a full season, adding Makasini, adding Bunty Afoa, having a rejuvenated Royce Hunt and perhaps a Fanua Bole, is that enough to get us from 13th to 8th? And that's up to the experts to decide that. But as fans, we're just going to cheer our team on and know hopefully they can do the job.
The interesting thing about Pole, and I'm always quite critical of him, I think we forget all the time because he's been around for so long. He's 23.
What disappointed me, Gary, is it's not about his age. It's when you know someone's capabilities. And look, Tim Sheens talked him up as being the next Jason Taumalolo 3 or 4 years ago. And then he had a couple of cracking games early in 2025. Even scored a try. He was really impactful. He was using his step. Suddenly, when you saw missed tackles and stragglers running back, it was you'd see Fanua Bole. Like, that was front and centre of the photo. So I don't know if he just lost interest. Maybe the youth thing does come in there. But again, if he's freshened up, had a good off season, he's got the ability. So when you see someone produce their ability and then not produce it, that's when I worry, because if they just haven't produced the ability at all, you can say, oh, well, he's young, he might develop. We know what he can do. He's developed. He can play footy. We just need the best out of him. We can't afford to be, Terrell May can't be afforded carrying that pack year after year. We've got to drop Terrell back to 55 minutes a game and let Terrell May be really impactful and have more impact, as opposed to being a 70-minute player and, has to be like a stayer and pace himself to get through a game.
So what do you do with Terrell May in that instance? Say he comes up, you say you're the coach, right? And he comes up to you and says, "Coach, I want to play him as 70 minutes. I'm the leader of the pack. I want to play it." Do you give him what he wants, or do you take the higher ground and say, "No, this is better for you"?
I think the coach knows what he wants. If Benji trusts Terrell, he thinks, well, okay, he wants to play 7. And given that Benji really didn't have much help in the forward stock, so it's not like when Terrell comes off, he's got an adequate replacement. Then I guess Benji had to play him. I had to listen to him. But personally, when I look at his Roosters games the year before, he only started 3 games, I think, the year before, and that was due to the Origin period. He came off the bench in all those games. And there were some games he still produced big minutes, but I think that year, 2024, he averaged 46 minutes per game. But you could see every time he smashed the line, he could produce an offload and do this. And we saw that at the start of 2025 with us. But then as the year went on, he had to pace himself a bit more.
Any of those games he started and played more than 60 minutes, he made over 200 metres though.
I know, but I mean, yeah, but like some of those stats can be, you know, they're a little bit misleading. Like how impactful are those meetings? Like we've seen Fanua Bole have 90 metres and they can be impactful. Like I just think we need to, you know, you don't want to take the, you know, to use a horsing analogy, he's become a stayer and he's not a sprinter. Like he could just really be impactful, and I actually think that's why it cost him Origin. I really do. I think he wasn't like if Origin was picked after the first 6 games, he would have been the first person picked.
If you have Hunt and Bunty Afoa in your side, you can probably afford a little bit less impact from Terrell May.
You can, but why shouldn't you get the best out of Terrell May? Like, why should we nullify his abilities just to fill minutes? That's my opinion on that. I want to see the best out of everyone. But look, Benji knows them better than anyone, so we can all have opinions on it. But again, we'll see what Terrell produces this year.
Anything else from training, Steve?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. But I do agree that we need to be more impactful. The thing with Polo for me is the missed tackle in the middle. Like when he gets tired, he can miss a tackle.
And it's not always when he gets tired. He has a habit of missing tackles early.
It's not even missing tackles. He doesn't just get back in that A defender position. Like he's struggling from marker, and people have taken advantage of it.
But no, nothing else really. I'm just looking at my notes if I wrote anything. Oh, look, I will mention, because I said I can't find a spot for Seafarth, but I'll tell you, when they're doing their fitness work, my goodness, he's amazing.
That's the one thing. I know I get told I'm critical of Seafarth. The one thing you can never be critical of is his effort and his training. I think it's first class all around.
And his passion, but that passion is what leads to some of those silly penalties that we see.
Yeah, the dumb penalties need to be taken out of his game.
Correct.
So there's been a few key stories over the off-season, Rob. I think the biggest one, and it's ongoing, is Jahream Bula. Will he stay? Will he go? Your thoughts on where we are and how important he is to us moving forward?
I don't want to mock what the outcome is of that, because I'd love to say that he's going to stay. I'm really on the fence with this one. I've had too many people tell me he's going to leave, and then you're hearing this big push from our club saying he wants to stay. Just get it done. And just selfishly, this is huge for me. Like, as a supporter, I just know we can build so much around his attacking skills. I still think he's great under the high ball. He's generally a great defender, especially the first season that he played. We can see what he can do, covering at fullback and saving those tries. He's got it all. And now he's developing playing both sides of the field. We saw him predominantly play right side of the field when Galvin was there first half of last year. You could see that he was trying to change that up. He's developing a passing game. I keep saying Terrell's our most important player because of just the workload he does, but Jahream's our best player. It's not even close.
All our structure when he plays is completely different to when he's not there. Our second phase, our shape, all comes off Jahream Bula. How important is he to our club?
Oh, he's the future of our club. He's part of the future. Careful,
last time we said someone was our future, he nicked off pretty quick.
Yeah, well, that's pretty true. Look, all the indications, you can only go off what you hear. Like, and I'm talking about what we hear from inside the club, not talking about what you read on socials. That's not worth anything. But what we're hearing from inside the club is that it is close, and he wants to be there, and they're confident. I suppose they can't say much else than that. But if they weren't that confident, they'd say nothing at all. So
I think it's going to hinge on the first couple of months. One thing, speaking to Sean after the function, he said regardless of what Jahream does, he has to make a decision by May. So we're going to know by May. So obviously, if we start, losing 7 out of our first 8 games, it's going to hinder our chances of keeping him. If our team is going pretty well and they're enjoying each other and he's playing good football, there's no reason for him to leave. If our future looks good on the field to him, why would he go if we can match the offers? But if we're travelling poorly, who could blame him for wanting to leave, as much as it would pain me?
This is the first real public big test for Sean Mellencamp.
Absolutely.
He needs to get this one right.
Yeah, this is the first post-Richo era focus point for the club, because he's got to get Fainu, he's got to get Sione Fainu right, he's got to get Jahream Bula right. He's got to, and that would help his own confidence. I mean, because deep down he'd have to be thinking, "Gee, this is all new to me." He's not Shane Richardson in that area. It's not a criticism of him, because he's obviously very skillful in a lot of areas. He's proven that.
He doesn't have 50 years in the game either, though.
No, he doesn't, and not at that level. Doing negotiations. So this to me tells us whether we need a football manager or not, and whether Sean has the ability and the experience and the nous to get these hard ones over the line.
It's only my opinion, but on this one, I actually think I'm 100% right. Whatever Jahream Bula does is not going to be because of Sean Mellencamp. It's not fair to use this as his litmus test and say, well, if he gets this done, it's great. Jahream Bula's deciding this on the crap that we put up with a couple of months ago, seeing that we've got a dysfunctional owners, seeing that the CEO just got sacked, seeing that we've come 13th and 16th prior to that. So it's not Sean's fault if we keep him, or if he gets it, great. But if Jahream Bula decides to stay, it's because he sees we're going in the right direction, we're playing some good footy on the field, and that he can improve at our club. So if he goes, I don't think that's an X on Sean Mellencamp. That's just my opinion. But I think it's unfair to just be. He's an interim CEO. He's been there for 6 weeks.
I don't say this very often, Rob. Very good points.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I don't throw him on the bus, under the bus, especially if you two are trying to speak to him early next week.
Heading into the season,
you just want to be on that pod.
Yeah,
not at all.
Just buttering up the CEO.
Hey, let me tell you, I'm going to have a bit of a brag here. If Sean was on the pod, he might not come back another time. That's why I'm deliberately removing myself on the pod. You were there firsthand. I gave him some really tough things that he handled pretty well, actually, to be fair. But, yeah, I wasn't going to hold back at that forum.
Your name has come up a couple of times in conversations.
Yeah, I'm sure it has.
Okay, heading into 2026, I'm going to ask you both the thing you're most positive about heading into this season and the thing you're most worried about. I'll let you go first, Rob.
I haven't really given this much time. The thing I'm most positive about, I'm a pretty glass half empty sort of guy.
I was nearly only going to give you the one option.
I've been pretty tortured as a supporter, as we all have. Look, honestly, it's just really simple. I'm just looking forward to having the footy back. I want to see how Macassini goes. I think the 6-man bench, for example, is going to help someone like Macassini.
And you know my thoughts on the 6-man bench.
No, I know, but see, this is where respectfully you're wrong, and Steve actually agrees with you on this. So to the listeners and viewers out there, Gary doesn't think the 6-man bench helps because rugby league's a game of attrition, et cetera. If you look back at I'll give you 2 games, okay? Let's look back at our Cowboys game.
You should never wind him up because he just keeps going.
No, but let me give you some facts, not opinion. We played the Cowboys. We've got them on toast. That's after losing Adam Dewey in the first 15 minutes of the game. Then Latu cops a head injury. And then suddenly we got to play musical chairs. And our right side was Charlie Murray and Heath Mason, I'm not going to drop that F word, whoever the hell was out there. And we got torched by Purdue down the left-hand side. And we had a 2-score lead. We ended up losing by 2 scores. And the same happened against the Gold Coast. We cop an injury or a head bin or whatever it was, and they go, with this system now, the one thing all teams are going to do, Gary, you had the old Tim Sheen style that would maybe play a wing or a centre on the bench, but predominantly you play a dummy half and 3 forwards. Now that you've got a 6-man bench, all teams are going to pick a specialist centre/winger. So it's the perfect way to develop Macassini if he doesn't start. So we might start with Toa and Talon, okay, in the centres, and then Macassini's there, and if he might not even get a minute, but if someone goes down in the centres, you don't have to strut a second rower like Samuela Fainu and put him at right centre or whatever. And then that's actually more chance of copying injuries and stuff like that. I love this initiative. I think it's fantastic.
Do you think we carry outside of Latu a second hooker on that 6-man bench?
If he's training at hooker, no. I'd love to see Tristan Hope. I think he's got the world at his feet. But again, that's a perfect way to blood him as well. Let's just say Latu's out. You might have a game where Tristan's there on the bench, and you know what? Benji decides we're going to play Appy for 80 minutes. But if something goes wrong with Appy, he can throw him into the game.
It's an interesting point, that one, and it's like it's not my greatest concern, but it is a concern, is how we use that number 14 or Latu when he comes on the field. I think we all agree that the days of Appy playing 80 minutes is not good for Appy, it's not good for the team. It might be for a few games, but as the season goes on, he becomes less and less effective playing long minutes. So he needs a break. He needs that 20 minutes off the field. So that means at the moment, if Latu's 14, he comes on. Do we want to use Latu's skill set solely in at dummy half for those 20 minutes of games? We've got to find other opportunities for Latu Fainu to get out into the halves and use his skill set out at first and second receiver, right?
Correct, but that's he's going to be one of the 4 guys used on the bench. He'll be used as that backup hooker, and if something, heaven forbid, something terrible happens to Jahream or Adam, then he can come on and play that role. But I actually think that bench will have a specialist centre, and if we have it, Gary, I know it sounds crazy, a specialist second rower. You don't want to be putting a middle playing on the edge. We expect Kai Pearce-Paul and Samuel Afenu to play 80 minutes. So there's no need for another second rower. You will basically have 3 middles, your dummy half, a centre, and I would think a second rower. And I know, for example, a club that's endowed with second rowers like the Roosters, they'll have a specialist second rower and he might not even get any games.
Who would you play in that role?
In that second row position?
That
I'd
specialist on the bench.
I'd have to see. I don't think we've got a third great second rower at our club. That's being brutally honest.
We don't.
Roberts is young with potential. Maverick guy never came on, and unfortunately, it's only one game. It's the only game I got to watch him play last year, but I think Jacob Preston put 3 or 4 tries on him when they played Canterbury at Olympic Park. So, hopefully he's had a good off-season. He does well, but I think they're just there for a bit of, well, especially Guy, there for a bit of depth. He might play a little bit of middle, but he's not, I don't think he's going to be a regular in our 19.
Well, last year showed that. When our second rowers went down, we had middles playing out in the second
Correct.
row.
And that's what I think is really good about this. It's making the games more competitive because, look, I think
I love the unpredictability.
I know you do.
That's what I like about the game.
I think you're a bit of a rugby league nerd like me. You might remember when the Broncos lost to the Cowboys in the first semi-final, I'm going back 7 or 8 years ago up in North Queensland. They lost in Golden Point, the Broncos. The Broncos lost both centres during the game. That's a totally different result if they didn't lose both their centres. They had to shuffle people around and they did well to get to Golden Point.
You'll never see a thing like Luke Garner running down the wing to score a try again.
Luke Garner started at centre against Manly. That's a different.
He did.
He wasn't like a.
But that only came about because they had shifted him there in games and saw he could handle the role.
Because our club sucked. We had no depth in the centres.
I think we've got to go just back to player welfare.
Correct.
The discussion has turned around into how are we going to put our bench together to have the best football outcome, right? But we've got to be fair about it. If we're going to make rule changes left, right and centre for the welfare of players, then this 6-man bench, to me, it's just a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer for us. Like for us now, see, with the backs, you've got Latu that'll cover the halves and hooker. You'd have Macassini on the bench to cover centre or wing, and should he need to come on the centre, like if something happens to Jahream Bula, Taruva goes to fullback. So we've got all those backline options covered, provided there's only one injury, not multiple injuries in the backline. And the forwards should speak for themselves.
And you talk about unpredictability, Gary, right? Like when this starts, you're going to need someone who's really on the ball with a bit of nous and a few brains to be managing the bench, because that could get confusing real quick.
I think it's going to be a lot like we've played our bench previously, where we don't use most of our rotation till the second half. With the 6-man bench, I think all teams, you'd be lucky to get more than 2 changes in the first half, because I want to make sure no one has got injured.
Well, I guess that brings the attrition back into the game, because you are working those players out on the field a bit harder.
Correct.
I don't think, after all that, you gave me your positive and most concerning aspect. Were you trying to avoid that question?
I want to see Macassini. I want to see a full season of Taylor and May. For me, again, this is just my own personal sporting following. If Jahream Bula re-signs, that's going to be like when Damien Martin re-signed for Richmond. That's how much it means to me, and it's just going to be the shot the arm the club needs should he do that. I want to see some expansive football that Steve's talking about. I think that's our strength. I just want to enjoy the season, guys. I don't want to talk too much about the ownership and the crap they're
So you're not going to
putting
give me your worries?
No, look, okay, what's the worst that can happen? We go last again. Like it's happened 3 years in a row previously. I will say I think this season is the most important season because given what's happened at ownership level, even though they say the football department is separate, it clearly affects recruitment and retention. And the only people we would be getting there would be the guys that want the retirement package or the players that can't get a first grade spot at other clubs that use us to show what they can do. And then once they show that they can play good footy, they get bought by another club.
And all the news before the Holman Barnes Group's actions was that Jahream Bula was about to resign and Jahream Bula was going to remove his clauses. Neither of those have happened since. Steve, you're positive and the thing you're most worried about.
Yeah, really easy. My positives, what I'm really looking forward to is looking at our forward pack be more dominant with and without the ball. I think a couple of players that we've brought into the pack plus their level of fitness from what I've seen, I think there's good news going to be there. My concern, it's the same as it's always been. It's not going to change. It's Holman Barnes Group and the instability that they bring to our club.
We've got 2 trials coming up. The first one's up at Newcastle on the 14th of February, Friday night. Don't expect many first graders to be playing in that, Rob?
I'd expect them all in the last trial.
Any young guys you want to see in that first trial who you're going to keep an eye on?
Not really. I'm interested more in seeing who, rather than looking at our player. I'm always who's going to be the backup for the halves. What are they doing there? Who's going to be the backup fullback? What are they thinking there? Is it going to be Mason or is he going to stay in the halves? You know, and again going back to what I'm looking forward, I want to see in both trials because a point that I don't know where I heard this, but I remember hearing someone say, no, Sean said it. Sean said it at the forum that Benji has said they want to play the same style of football. Right, because they keep saying we've found our football, we've found our style of football, and he said we want to play the same style of football right through the grades. That's through pathways, right through to first grade, the same style. So I want to see in that first trial whether it's our first grade team, which I don't expect it will be, or backups, dominating forward pack, a hard working forward pack that has impact.
And I think you'll see Andrews and Jock Madden in the halves for that game, Rob.
Yeah, you'll get the guys that aren't going to be regular first graders. But again, I rate Jock Madden. He has had opportunities at Brisbane. He didn't take them. But I think he's a welcome addition back to our club. And definitely we're so endowed in the halves. I don't think there's any issues there.
Well, and the last time our reserve grade side did well was when Jock Madden was at the club. He was very strong in that reserve grade side, and I think that's where he'll spend most of his time this year.
Again, it's just removing Jock as an individual out of it. I've always said you need stability in that cup team, and it's good if you've got that structure there. Like, for example, when we got rid of Aidan Caesar, even if he wasn't ever going to play first grade again, I would have loved to have had him as our halfback in cup. And that way you got all the other players have a general with experience and they learn off him. I think, we don't put enough effort into cup and how that's worked. And that needs to be the stepping stone for first grade. So I'm glad to hear that Benji wants everyone to play the same style of footy in all grades.
Second trial is on Friday the 20th of February out at Leichhardt Oval. With us having the buy-in in the first round, it's like 3 or 4 weeks after that we play our first game.
That's a full dress rehearsal.
You expect to see the full squad?
I'd expect to see the full squad for the first half of the game, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. We pretty much got to see most of the team play the whole game against Parramatta.
Yeah, I think they'll get a long hit out because of that 1 month.
Yeah,
I think they'll play 60 minutes.
Of course, there's Las Vegas in between as well, isn't there? Jeez.
So we don't play until 2 weeks after the start of the competition.
I actually think there'll be another trial that will be
internal,
unannounced. They'll play a full-on game at training.
West Tigers versus Holman Barnes Group,
maybe.
Look, I don't know who will be. I don't know who will be playing, but I'm sure Steve will be there because it's second home now.
Well, aren't some of all these social guys getting the game together? Maybe they could suit up against.
You didn't get called up to play in that?
No, mate, missed out again.
You didn't get called up?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Thanks for joining me today, guys. I think a really good first hit out for the year. Speaking about the year, some very big changes coming up for the whole channel this year. So you don't want to miss those. We'll be announcing a lot of new stuff over the next couple of weeks. get onto our socials, get onto the West Tigers Life YouTube page. Make sure you're subscribed and followed to all of those to make sure you don't miss out on what's going to be a very big season for Claws Out and a very big season for the West Tigers Life channel, Rob.
Yeah, we're really excited about this. We want our YouTube channel to be literally the one-stop shop. It's not going to be just podcasts. There's going to be 15-minute reels. There's going to be 2-minute reels. We're even thinking about doing a new daily service of, just a 5-minute news service just as an update. And yeah, if you subscribe to that, you'll get all your notifications. And yeah, we're really excited. And there's going to be a name change as well. So we're pretty pumped about it.
Look out for that in the next couple of weeks. We're teasing it at the moment, but some big things coming. I'm sure you're off, probably to the club straight after this, Steve?
No, I'm not. Actually, I'm going home to mow my lawns.
Thanks for coming in, Rob.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks for hosting.
Make sure you get out to Concord with him. He's the king of Concord.
Listen,
man.
you're going to disappoint me if you're really soft on Sean early next week. Okay, go hard.
I'm actually going out to look for Eddie because we need a decent host.
Look, I don't know where Eddie is. I think we should see him by semi-final time. So thanks to the guys at Mic'd Up Studios, not mic'd out. We're Claws Out. They're mic'd up at Parramatta. They're great to us. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening and catch you in a couple of weeks.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye, guys.